And it's a request filming today for Sam Tucker, Church of St Mary Woolnoth, the Bulteel family that Sam is interested in. I don't think there will be any memorials in there to them, because this was, although there's been a church on this site for many hundreds of years, first mention of a Christian place of worship's in the 12th century, but archaeological excavations have uncovered Roman and Saxon remains that lead them to believe that there may have been worship going on this site for at least 2,000 years. But the church was badly damaged in the Great Fire of London, repaired by Sir Christopher Wren, but under Nicholas Hawksmoor and the 50 New Churches Act it was rebuilt in around 1715. So we will go inside and we'll see what we can see. I'll get you some exterior views of the church first. You can see its clock tower up there, or turret clock. Oh, sorry. Oh dear. I need to get sunglasses, you know, I can't see a fucking thing. Or transitions lenses. Lombard Street we're on at the moment. And I'll take you to a small piece of history just over here, which was originally the old Parish pump, all with lead and everything like that. But replaced with more modern things. So I shall pause you for a sec. Get some views of the church this way, looking straight down King William Street. If you go down that way, you'll hit London Bridge. So, join me inside for this one. And we are in. And this church has an interesting link with the slave trade and the abolition of slave trade and the hymn of Amazing Grace. John Newton and the abolition movement, 1725, was born in Wapping. 1745 to 54, he worked on slave ships, serving as a captain on 3 voyages. 1748, conversion experience during a violent storm on one of the crossings. 1748, he became a surveyor of the tides at Liverpool and began a theological study. 1764 to 80, he served as a curate of Olney Church in Buckinghamshire. 1773, introduced Amazing Grace on New Year's Day. 1780, became rector of St Mary Woolnoth, the very church we're in. Whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. 1785 to 6, William Wilberforce asks for advice from John Newton in the midst of his evangelical conversion and joins the abolitionist movement. 1787, first meeting of the Society for the Effecting of Abolition of the Slave Trade at James Phillips print shop in George Yard, Lombard Street. 1788, Newton revealed his slave trading past in Thoughts upon the African Slave Trade, in which he described the horrific conditions of slave ships. He sent copies to every MP and testified before the Privy Council at a parliamentary hearing on slavery. In 1788, Brooke slave ship diagram printed at Phillips print shop in George Yard, 7,000 distributed. 1807, Abolition of the Slave Trade Act, 1807, entered into the statute books, making the slave trade illegal. Newton died 9 months later and was buried here at St Mary's in the crypt. 1833, Slavery Abolition Act. 1833 gave freedom to all slaves in the British Empire. And here is the diagram of a slave ship. Brooke received via former slave Aleda Equiano If you go back to the Queen's House series at Greenwich, type it in the little, where you see the little search bar magnifying glass, you'll see a bust of that gentleman, Lady Equiano, from Thomas Clarkson's print. 7,000 copies in James Phillips' print shop in George Yard, Lombard Street. By the end of 1788, the Brooke diagram was displayed in homes, businesses, and reproduced in newspapers all over Britain. The image of the horror of slavery turned the tide of public opinion. And you can see why, can't you? They packed them in like sardines, didn't they? God bless them. What I don't often reveal in my London Look page is that my own family were slaves themselves, although I appear white. My great-grandfather, blood great-grandfather, Harry, was African American. He married a white woman, my granddad married a white woman, dad married a white woman, and there you end up with little old me. But we've traced our slave ancestry back to America, Maryland and New Jersey, and three men that I'm enormously proud of. Four actually: Levin Steele, my 4 times great-grandfather, and his sons, Dr. James Steele, William Steele, known as the author of the Underground Railroad, and Peter Steele, also an abolitionist. My blood 3 times great-grandfather, Samuel, who wasn't an abolitionist but a farmer and was born into that life and did pretty well for himself. But that's enough of me, and back on to John Newton. Celebrating the 250th anniversary of Amazing Grace. On the 1st of January 2023 marked 250 years since the words to Amazing Grace first appeared in John Newton's New Year's Day service in 1773. It is believed that Amazing Grace is the most famous hymn of all times, performed around 10 million times annually. John Newton, rector of St Mary Woolnoth for 28 years, had played a part in the slave trade. He experienced God's forgiveness and grace himself. His life was transformed and he became a key figure in the fight to abolish slavery. John Newton's epitaph in St Mary Woolnoth was a summary of his life in his own words. God is still transforming lives today and extending his amazing grace. Perhaps take a few minutes to listen to a few of the amazing grace stories on the screen. If you would like to experience this grace for yourself, you can ask God here, now, and in your own words. And you can, in my words, you can ask God that anywhere. And also, if you would like to speak to someone, feel free to knock on the office door or email office@imprintchurch.co.uk to arrange a time. And if you've got any problems at all, or you want to speak to someone impartial who you're not connected with, that's who you can go to. And here we have the man himself, John Newton, clerk, once an infidel, a libertine, a servant of slaves in Africa, was by the rich mercy of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ preserved and restored and pardoned and appointed to preach the faith he had long laboured to destroy. He ministered nearly 26 years as curate and vicar of Olney in Bucks, and 28 years as rector of these united parishes. On February the 1st, MDCCL, as Latin, he married Mary, the daughter of the late George Catlett of Chatham, Kent, whom he resigned to the Lord, who gave her on December the 15th MDCCXC. But we know when he died from our information we've just seen. So that's the links. And the architecture in this church is particularly stunning, I will say so. Unfortunately for Samathenia, as I call her, this church is Hawksmoor, and Giles Bulteel, or Bulteel, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it, who Sam is interested in, was buried here in 1608. His son was buried in the church in the 18th century. But what we need to remember, as I said, outside this church, although there's been a church on this site for many hundreds of years, it was damaged by the fire, the original one, and then eventually replaced in the early 18th century with this one. So away would have gone all the original memorials. And sadly, the Victorians got their hands on this one as well. So a lot of the originality, which would have included floor memorials, is gone. We'll make our way around this sideway. Here you have the church warden's staff's of office. This is a coffee shop now. It's an imprint church, but serves as a coffee shop as well as a church, open from 7 o'clock in the morning. And the coffee and tea is very good. So, if that's something you would like to see. You see what I mean about the architecture. Hawksmoor churches are very impressive, but delicate in the same sense, like they're not impressive and imposing like some of the Gothic churches may tend to be at times. Although I love medieval churches, if I'm honest with you. Pretty much all churches, apart from the extremely modern. I'm not that keen on modernist architecture for my churches, if I'm honest. Photos of the memorials, there are quite a few in here, will feature in a separate post with pictures of the church. This is the old clock movement that was once in the bell tower. Unreal city under the brown fog of a wintry dawn. A crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many, I had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exhaled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street, to where St Mary Woolnoth kept the hours, with a dead sound of the final stroke of 9. T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. And I will take pictures of this because there is an inscription on it. (1786). Is that repaired something? 1786 by... No, I can't make that out, I'm afraid. It's very, very delicate writing. And my eyesight's poor, so I'll photograph that. Which I'm quite sure Zoom In Zoe will like. You know who you are. And you see what I mean about the floor the Victorians got their hands on this one, and they like to add their little Gothic and Pugin-esque type tiles, and obviously it may have needed upgrading, but when they did that it would have taken away a lot of the original floor memorials, which is a shame. Exodus. Thou shalt have none other gods but me. St Matthew. Honour thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long in the land in which the Lord thy God giveth thee. The detail is exquisite in this altar screen. Would have been in its day seen as a little bit popish. The Church of England were very wary of anything that even verged on even mild popery. But luckily, these architects had their way, and we can enjoy these beautiful places of worship still today. I should step backwards without falling down the stairs, preferably. Pews are Victorian. The church would once have originally had the high box pews. I do like that they leave the church warden's staffs of office on display. Some churches don't, for obvious reasons. These would once have been brightly lit with candles in the original day. I will go round and check each monument and memorial and photograph it. Sorry Sam, there don't seem to be any Bulteels here. Not mentioned anyway. They'll be down in the old crypt if they were buried here, because they didn't interfere with that too much, unless they charnelled it. I don't know if any of the residents were taken out and sent to Brookwood, which if the Victorians got their hands on this place is very likely. But there's still a whisper of a memory of them here, isn't there? As the saying goes, speak but my name and I shall live forevermore. That's exquisite, isn't it? I don't use that word very often, but this place has earned it. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for watching. And there'll be some historical images and info, possibly something on John Newton if I can find. I should imagine there'll be images of him. I hope there is anyway. So join me for that at the end of the video, and thank you for watching. Now there's a lot to take in on our historical look back on St Mary Woolnoth, because don't forget, the church that we see today is not the one that was always there. Our main reason for coming here today really was to look for memorials for Giles Bulteel, or Bulteel, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it. It was a merchant. It was buried here in 1603, and it was a request filming for Sam Tucker. I've not been able to find any memorials in there. Unfortunately, the original St Mary Woolnoth church was damaged by the Great Fire of London, patched up by Sir Christopher Wren. Come the early 18th century, it was in a great state of disrepair, was taken down and replaced under the 50 New Churches Act with the church that we see today. So when that happened, unfortunately, any memorials to the Bulteels would have gone along with the old church. The remains, and I've done a bit of research because, as you'll discover soon on another video, I've stayed up very, very late for a particular reason. So I've been doing some research this evening, and I discovered that in 1892 all the remains from crypts and vaults were taken up and removed to the City of London Cemetery. So that's where the Bulteels will now lie. But we can bring their memory to life a little bit, which I like to do with historical Londoners. So what you're looking at here is the London that the Bulteels would have known. The copper plate map of London, 1553 to 1559. So not too many years before his time, and London didn't change at all really until the Great Fire swept everything away. So this is the London that he would have known. And here is a colorized version of the map. Now if you look closely at the churches, which you can make out, each one is different. So this is brilliant because it gives us a good reference point to what our church would actually have looked like, which I've marked here with the blue arrow, which is on Lombard Street. Because don't forget, in those days, King William Street did not exist. So this is Giles Bulteel's London, and we're going to go into a little bit more in-depth history on Giles Bulteel with a biography from wikitrees.com. Giles' birth has been given as 1564 in Tournai in Hainaut, Belgium, but I have found a source for this information as yet. I believe he was much older. If he was a deacon in 1579 and his oldest son was born in about 1578, on the 5th of August 1579, Giles Bulteel signed a document as a deacon of the French Church of London. In 1593, Giles was a merchant living in London with his wife and 5 children and 2 servants. Bulteel, Giles and wife, French merchant, 5 children, employs 1 stranger man, a servant, and 1 stranger maidservant. A stranger, their terminology in those days, a stranger was a foreigner. And a stranger could be someone from the opposite side of the country. It didn't have to be someone from abroad. You would be a stranger in that parish. And they dwelt in England 15 years, no denizen of the French church. I have read that a further mutilated entry states that GB was born in and came from Tournai in France. His 5 English-born children comprise of 4 sons and 1 daughter of 15, 14, 12, 9 and 6. Daughter Marie was born in London according to the entry of her marriage on the 15th of April 1600. Céline Philippe, fils de Nicolas, natif d'Honneurs, et Marie Bulteel, fille de Giles, natifure de Londres, April the 15th. Sorry for my appalling French. Giles' will was written on the 4th of May 1603. He states that he is the son of the late James and Marie Willacourt. Giles' daughter, Marie, was married to Philip Céline. His wife, Marie Broughton, and his sons, James and Peter, were named executrix and executors. A son, John, was also named. The handwriting is very difficult to read. A name looks like Samuel. The will was proved on the 16th of May 1603. Giles was buried in St Mary Woolnoth, London, England, on the 11th of May 1603, and the burial entry reads, the 11th day of May 1603 was buried Giles Bulteel, merchant, stranger. And this is where it gets interesting, because I remember Sam said she didn't know the name of his wife. Mary Woolnoth, widow of the late Giles Bulteel, wrote her will on the 15th of April 1611. Mary mentioned her 3 sons, James, Peter, and Peter is one of the people that Sam mentioned who we were looking for a memorial for. He was buried in the church in the 18th century. And John Bulteel. James and Peter being already married, she also mentions her deceased son Samuel. The will was proved on the 28th of June 1611. And this, marked with the blue arrow, is the church that the Bulteels would have known and worshipped in, and at the end that their funeral services would have been carried towards. Usually for gentry and merchant classes, their funerals occurred of an evening with a muffled tolling bell to mark out in honour distinction for a person passing of a soul and someone with money, because you had to pay to have that bell rang. So yeah, so this is down Lombard Street where that funeral procession in 1603 would have made its way. And now we leave Giles Bulteel and his London behind. As I said, the church was damaged in the Great Fire of London, the original church, and it was patched up by Sir Christopher Wren, so they couldn't replace all of them, it just wasn't feasible, so the ones that weren't too badly damaged were repaired. But come the early 18th century, do beg your pardon, I have a penchant for chiming clocks, and that's just one of them that went off. I forgot to put it on silent mode. Come the early 18th century, the church was in a horrendous state of disrepair, so it was decided to be taken down and replaced with the St Mary Woolnoth that we know today under the 50 New Churches Act. The architect, Nicholas Hawksmoor. Hawksmoor churches, as I said, are impressive but very delicate. When you look at the architecture, the columns within, the ceiling, the things like that, beautiful. And this is the church, his church, the St Mary Woolnoth that we know today, but as it would have looked when brand new. And John Newton, our slave trader turned abolitionist, 1725 to 1807. I've been able to provide several images of him. I do like to provide images of historical Londoners if I can, and there are several, thanks to Google. This is him in 1799. And the vicarage in Olney in Buckinghamshire, where Newton lived while minister of the local parish. During his 16-year residence in Olney, Newton would write the hymn Amazing Grace. Now, if you look online, there are several references to his burial place. One says that he's buried in St Mary Woolnoth. He's not. He's merely remembered with a memorial stone that we've seen there. He's actually buried in the church at Olney. And this is St Mary Woolnoth, Lombard Street, London, where Newton officiated until his death in 1807. And this is the church as he would have known it. We see the church just a few years after his death in 1812 by artist George Shepherd, this lovely painting. And the church really hasn't changed all that much, has it, over time? A great survivor. Here we see the interior of the church with the original high box pews that I spoke about. The Victorians took away and replaced with the ones that we've seen. And also note the lectern. That in this image is on the right side. Nowadays it's on the left side, and that was believed to have been moved there during the Victorian renovations. King William Street, London, 1851, a busy street, and our church just on the left. And if you look straight down King William Street, you can see the monument to the Great Fire of London that swept the original St Mary Woolnoth and many other churches away. It didn't sweep it away, it damaged it and really put the nail in the coffin that would make it go not too many years after the Great Fire. They patched up the ones they could, and eventually some of those had to be taken down and replaced. Here we see the church in 1910 from King William Street, a busy King William Street with a horse omnibus, horses and carriages, and people right at the bottom of the picture. One of the fellas wearing a straw boater. 1927, a drawing by Sidney Upton shows our church there. And the topical press, 9th of October 1946. The church was a lucky survivor because a bomb did land just over the road. So we're lucky to still have this beautiful old lady with us today. Television chef Fanny Craddock, speaking from the pulpit, St Mary Woolnoth Church on the 7th of August 1969. I wonder what Fanny had to say for herself. Not a very nice woman from what I've been told. 26th of November 1970. Lord Mayor attends the American Thanksgiving Day service. The Lord Mayor of London today attended the 3rd annual American Thanksgiving Day service held at the church of St Mary Woolnoth, Lombard Street EC. Keystone photo shows the Reverend John Nichols seen conducting the service inside the church. And I must remember to actually read the memorials when I visit a church. I generally photograph the church, go around, photograph the memorials after and leave. I will start reading them because this is an interesting one. Edward Lloyd, who in the 17th century kept a coffee house known as Lloyd's, which developed in the 19th century into the Corporation of Lloyd's of London. He was a member of the vestry of this church, and he died in 1713 and was buried here. In 1892, his remains were removed to Ilford Cemetery, that's the City of London cemetery. This tablet was erected in 1931 by the Corporation of Lloyd's. And here is the man himself, over on the left, the only image I could find of him. On the 15th of February 1713, the founder of Lloyd's of London died in London. And this is where it all began. You see the blue plaque on the left, which marks the original site of the old coffee house, long since gone. And over on the right, you see an original block print image of the coffee house inside. And they were pretty roarious places, they were, the coffee houses. Sorry, that's another chiming clock going off. And that coffee house would develop from that into the Lloyd's of London that we know today. And this is the Marmite of the architecture world, this building. People either love it or they detest it with a passion. And that concludes our history of St Mary Woolnoth. Hope you all found it interesting. Thanks for watching.